On the second day of battle, the Athenians and Spartans take their respective defensive positions. Themistocles in the Artemisium Strait, Leonidas and his 300 Spartans in the Thermopylae Pass. They both prepare for the second Persian attack.
The sun comes up on the second day, and Xerxes says, well, enough with the junior level infantry. We're sending in the big boys.
Xerxes sends in the hammer and fist of the Persian army, the silent and masked heavy infantry called the Immortals.
Xerxes decided to send in the A-team, the Immortals. He believed that once the Immortals were put into action, that would end the resistance immediately.
Here come 10,000 men, assembled in a rectangle, in essence. Boom, 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 right to you in silence. No matter what happens, they're coming right at you. They wore no helmets, but they had what's called a tiara on their head. The tiara was a wrapped cloth, a very thin cloth that they could see through.
10,000 strong. They were called Immortals because when one man retired or died, he was immediately replaced by another.
The armies stand some 50 yards apart in the Thermopylae Pass. The Persians, faceless and mute. But silence is not part of the Spartan psychological strategy. Finally, the Persians advance. Silently, the Immortals slam into the Greek line. As on the previous day, the 300 Spartans and the Greek soldiers hold fast. The Immortal spears cannot penetrate the Greek armor. The Greek spears have no problem finding their mark. The Immortals wear thin scale armor beneath their tunics, but these overlapping metal scales are no thicker than playing cards. Powerless against the strength and precision of the Spartan dory. Persian shields are made only of wicker.
That worked very well if you were simply warding off javelins, dagger thrust, or if you were warding off arrows. But a wicker shield, compared to the Greeks, of course, which was a brass or bronze shield, the spear of the Greek infantry could easily pierce the wicker shield.
So man for man, company for company, platoon for platoon, they were no match for the Spartans in close combat.
It's fairly clear that they had never fought against a hoplite army that was as well trained, as well equipped, and as tactically flexible as the Spartans were.
After 2 days, thousands of Persians have been killed.
If you imagine an infantry line that's killing in front of it with the spears, okay, the dead themselves pile up. After every assault, there are dead men, there are men who are screaming in pain, men who are bleeding all over the landscape, but mostly men who are in the way. You have to get rid of them somewhere. So what would happen during one of the lulls in the battle is that squads would go forward and pull the dead out of the way.
At the end of the second day, the Persian body count is enormous, and the ground forces have once again been stymied.
So tactically speaking, after the first 2 days fighting at Thermopylae, Leonidas would have considered himself to be in a pretty good position. He had taken everything the Persians could throw at him, and he had lost only a few men himself.
Meanwhile, off the coast, Themistocles again leads the Athenian navy against the Persian fleet in the Artemisium Strait. The massive storm the night before has destroyed the Persian ships that sailed around Euboea. With no Persian ships bearing down behind him, Themistocles can concentrate his force to the front. But he is still outnumbered 5-1. While exact details of the battle are unknown, the Greek triremes again are able to destroy many of the Persian warships.
So by the end of the second day at sea, a similar scenario was working out. The Persians had again kind of tried to throw themselves at Themistocles at sea, and they hadn't done any better the second day. So the front was holding, the Greek front was holding, at sea and on land.
It is another psychological victory for the Greeks. Xerxes grows frustrated. But the solution will soon become clear to the Persian king, and it will lead to one of the most famous and heroic last stands in history. "7,000 Greek soldiers, led by the Spartan king Leonidas and his elite group of 300 Spartan warriors, block the narrow Thermoplyae pass in northeastern Greece. They are here to prevent the Persian army, the largest land force ever assembled, from destroying the Greek city-state of Athens.
You're stuck with the cork in the bottle, and you got to get the cork out of the bottle. What had happened till now, they tried a light infantry attack and suffered badly. And so they crossed with their best troops, which was the heavy infantry, and suffered just as badly. So now what to do? Things are getting a little dicey. The army is being held up. It has to eat every day. It's consuming supplies. It's getting nowhere. The answer is to find a way around the Spartan position.
Xerxes discovers the answer. A small trail leads from the Persian camp around Mount Koleodromos and continues behind the Greek line. Historians are unsure as to when Xerxes had become aware of the pass. Some believe that a Greek spy had informed him after the second day of battle. Seeing that he cannot penetrate the stiff Greek defense, and knowing his food supply is running short, Xerxes decides to use the pass.
What he did is at the nightfall of the second day, after the heavy infantry attack had failed in the center, began under the cover of darkness to move 10,000 men up that road and to flank the Spartan position.
But this pass was not unknown to Leonidas. Before the first day of the attack, Leonidas had stationed 1,000 men at the top of the pass. This force was made up of a people called the Phocians. But as the Persians approach the Phocian line, the defending force is missing.
There's an intersection at the top of that ridge. One leads down to the Phocia, and for some reason the Phocian troops think the attack is going to be on their homeland, and they withdraw.
Fearing their homeland will be attacked, the Phocians retreat to defend their families. The Persians now have an unhindered path to destruction.
But at this point, Leonidas is doomed. Above and behind them are 10,000 infantrymen who can come scrambling down the hill at any given time.
In the middle of the night, Greek scouts deliver the news to Leonidas that the Phocians have deserted. Knowing that he has been outflanked, Leonidas orders the retreat of the Greek infantry.
You can't just order 4,000 people to turn around and leave. There are a lot of reasons for that. One, the enemy knows immediately what you're doing is going to attack you from the front. You can't wait until you're completely enclosed in the back. What do you have to do? You've got to get relatively small units out in a phased withdrawal, hopefully quietly, so the enemy doesn't know essentially that the front has been thinned. Otherwise, he'll attack you.
By dawn, all of the Greek troops have retreated. All except Leonidas, the 300 Spartans, and about 1,000 soldiers from the Greek city-state of Thespia.
Very few people know this bit of information about the battle, but around 1,000 Thesbians, soldiers from the city-state of Thespia, stayed behind with Leonidas. They could have left, but they decided to stay and fight with the Spartans to the end. Now, the reason this gets lost is that the Battle of Thermopylae has been mythologized throughout history and in movies today in such a way that only 300 Spartans took on millions of Persians. But it's not so.
Still, this force of just over 1,000 is surrounded by tens of thousands of Persians. Leonidas and his men are about to make their last stand.
There was a great moment when the Spartans were going forward to the front lines to die, and their allies were going back to live. And that, to me, is in many ways the most emotional moment of the fight.
So the question is, why did he do this? Why did he do this? Why didn't Leonidas pull his groups out and go with them? Okay, and I think there are a couple of answers to that. You know, some people will say he was fulfilling the prophecy of the oracle.
Either your glorious city will be taken by the sons of Persia, or all Sparta must mourn for the loss of a king.
The sacrifice in his mind is about saving Sparta. And that's why he stays. And that's why he engages in a quixotic battle that he knows he's destined to lose. It's not because he wants to be a martyr. It's not because, as a Spartan soldier, he's been trained he must stand and die. Quite the opposite. As a Spartan soldier, he's been trained to sneak, to steal, to evade. But as a Spartan, he believes in the oracles. As a Spartan, he believes in the religion. And as a Spartan, it's his duty to stay and die for the state.
Leonidas's faith might have kept him in the Thermopylae Pass, but if looked upon from a military perspective, he might have been there as a covering force during a tactical retreat.
Every day he can delay these guys. Every minute he can delay these guys, give the Greeks behind him opportunity to assemble the armies and get new defensive position. The guys who pulled out of the pass still have a distance to go before they can link up with the other armies. And so essentially he decides to stand to the last man to buy the extra day or two. In short, he turns himself and his bodyguard into a covering force for strategic or tactical withdrawal.
Historians will never know why Leonidas decides to stay behind. But the last stand of these 300 men will be remembered forever.